What's good, my people? Welcome into Buckets, Action Network's daily NBA betting podcast. We're in the workshop, Friday NBA slate. Let's close out the week stronger with my guy, Bryan Fonseca. I am your host, Sean Little, recording this live from our Tommy John home studios. You know what to do. Go download the Action Network app. Still tons of stuff coming out for the Super Bowl. Still tons of stuff coming out for everything else going on in the sports world. And actually, right as we finish this Best Bets pod, me and Fonseca are going to jump on a trade deadline recap with Matt Moore, the guy, B.A., Brandon Anderson, and we're going to go through we're going to put the pencils down, the final thoughts on the complete NBA trade deadline. Of course, the wildest deadline of our lives. I don't think anybody would argue about that. So we're going to break that all down. So after you get your best bets here, make sure you go check out that episode of the trade deadline recap show with all of our guys over at the Action Network. You know how we do. We give the play, we give the cap, we get you guys out of here. Bryan Fonseca, NBA Friday. Give me your best bet.
Going with Bam Adebayo over 14.5 rebounds and assists against the Brooklyn Nets.
I'm going to go with the Philadelphia 76ers on the money line, minus 135. And then we got a Tommy John Big Ballsy parlay coming down the road. I'm adding Keon Johnson as a third leg, and that's going to be a lean for me. I'll talk about that play as well. Not an official, but a lean. Let's jump right into it. Bryan Fonseca. Speaking of Keon Johnson, we're going to Barclays Center. You're looking at Bam. Forget about scoring. Let's just clean up the glass and distribute while you're looking at this prop for Bam Adebayo.
Yeah, I don't know what he's going to do in terms of points, although that has been looking up lately. But to me, I'm looking at the rebounds and assists because against the Nets, he's been doing good with this number as of late against Nick Claxton, who is expected to play in this game. We'll see what the injury report turns up. He's not on it right now, but dudes just pop up because it's the NBA. And especially when a team is not being super competitive right now, you just never know, right? But last time they played against the Nets, which was just 2 weeks ago, Bam Adebayo has 16 rebounds and 4 assists. In the game before that, it was right before Christmas, he had 7 and 7, so just under there. Don't remember if he covered. He may have, because the line may have been 13.5 that night. I feel like I'm remembering that, but someone please correct me if I'm wrong. And he does have a 20 rebound game against the Brooklyn Nets from last season. But this prop, he's gone over in 8 of 12. We have a stretch now where Bam is looking more like himself. This wasn't the case for the start of the year. In fact, a bunch of guys who played in the Olympics got off to kind of rocky starts this season. Bam, over his last 6, is averaging north of 22 points, north of 11 rebounds, and north of 5 assists right now, with some rounding. That's actually 23, 11, and 6, but that's, generous. I just think that he's going to be rejuvenated after the trade. I'm not trying to insinuate anything between him and Jimmy Butler or anything like that necessarily, but I think a lot of the weight was being put on his shoulders, and I think he's going to just feel like just a cloud has been sort of lifted because he's the captain of this team, he's the leader of this team, and now he doesn't have to answer questions about Jimmy Butler anymore. And I think we sort of underestimate what this can do to a player mentally, because guys have to get up and move. And Steve Kerr actually had a really good bit about this, where he was talking about, not a bit, but he was in the press conference addressing Andrew Wiggins and them trading him to the Miami Heat in exchange for Jimmy Butler. And there were more moving parts, but basically talking about the human element of this, about how just had a kid recently and Dennis Schroeder just got a home recently and he's getting traded and all these different things. So I think when you're in that Heat locker room, now that you have clarity on this situation, I think some guys are going to start to play a little bit more comfortable, a little better. And I think Bam's going to be one of those guys who has a good second half, or I guess final third of the season.
Yeah, you heard that across the league too. Same thing with Golden State. It's just tight. It's a little tighter in here in the locker room. We don't know who's going to be around and for how long, because it was clear the front office of the Golden State Warriors was making calls to try to get someone for something, and hopefully a big name back for who for Steph Curry to play alongside with, right? And especially when you're talking about big names, man, everybody on the block, but Steph, if we're being honest. So yeah, it can get a little tight in that locker room. Same thing goes for the Miami Heat. They got some clarity now that Jimmy's gone, and they can kind of move forward. Also, it's not going to be a high scoring game. As it sits right now, the total is 209 and a half in the market as we record this at 11:20 p.m. on Thursday. And listen, Fonseca, the Nets played the Washington Wizards on Wednesday. I was actually at the game. I walked down the street. I love basketball, man. So I wanted to go walk down the street. I didn't have anything to do. I got my hands on some tickets, so I went down the street to watch Nets Wizards. And Corey Kispert was going crazy. Like it was actually kind of a fun game to watch. But offensively, they have absolutely nothing going on. They played the Wizards. They played the Wizards on Wednesday. They scored 102 points at Barclays. Prior to scoring 102 points on Wednesday at Barclays, the last time they broke 100 points at home, Monday, December 16th, against the Cleveland Cavaliers, and they scored 101, and they lost 130 to 101. There's a loss in here against the Jazz. They scored 94 points. Last time these two teams played, the Miami Heat and the Nets, they lost 110-95. They've scored more than 100 in their own building once since December 16th. So I like you going for including Bam's PRA and adding his points here. Seems like that would be the biggest stressor in a game that's not going to be fluid. It's not going to be up and down, and points are going to be at a premium. And we know Bam offensively, he's not the most gifted as is. He's a defensive guy that wants to rebound and do a couple other things.
I'm probably higher on him than you as far as offense,
probably.
But I would say, like, yeah, you don't want him to be your primary scorer necessarily. The fact that he's a very good playmaker for a big man is what makes him most attractive, not the fact that, you don't want him to have to put 25 points up in a game. That's what Tyler Hero is going to be for now. So, and was already doing, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. And Jovic went crazy the other night as well. So, yeah, this should be an interesting game now that things have cleared up and the direction for the squad going forward is solidified. Nets have been struggling to score points at the crib, as I just mentioned. Yeah, let's go. Bam, I think Bam in a spot could pick up 13 boards and do most of the lifting on that side of the rock. So let's hopefully cash that ticket and Bam has a good game on the glass and creating shots for others. All right. I don't get it, man. Philadelphia 76ers, money line, minus 135 in Detroit to take on the Pistons. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, Fonseca. I'm going to do a little gambling. We always try to find edges and educate guests and back those educated, research guesses up with dollars. That's what you do in gambling. You come out and you try to create, if it's via a model or whatever your approach is, if you feel there's an edge, you print the ticket. I'm going to do a little gambling here with something I don't have the most control over, and that's going to be the injury report for Cade Cunningham and the Detroit Pistons. Stay with me here.
Mm-hmm.
If you watched the Pistons and the Cavs the other night, Cade tweaked his ankle a little bit, gingerly walked to the bench, hobbled to the bench, but clearly nothing serious. It was just a tweaked ankle, but as you know how this goes, he pops up on the injury report today as questionable for Friday with a sprained ankle. I was watching the game live. Didn't look crazy. I wasn't watching it live because I was at Barclays, but I went back and watched it because it was a really good game.
Right.
But I gotta, this is my routine actually, Fonseca, let me tell you. Yeah. Especially for West Coast games that I don't feel like staying up for, or it's a game I want to rewatch. I'll just get up really early before my girl gets up, and I have a cup of coffee and I watch a game that I wanted to watch from the night before. That was
See,
the one.
that's the
And
habit.
so Cade,
That's the
yeah. So
habit. That's
it's
the habit that I need because I stay up late to watch the game. That's
yeah,
my problem.
bro. I was doing the thing where I'd be watching the game and it'd be like 8.5 in the third quarter, like the Lakers,
Yeah.
and then like the next thing you know, I'm like opening my eyes and it's like 5.5 left, and I'm like, man, I'm sleeping out here. Let me
No,
go to
I'd be
bed
too
and just
wired.
turn this on.
I'd be
Right.
too
So
wired.
that's what I've been doing. I've been getting up at like 5:45, 6:15, get coffee, and I watch a game I missed, and I'm good. And it's usually done because I got it recorded by like an hour and a half. So it's actually really nice. So to get back to the cap, Cade hobbles to the bench, nothing serious, pops up on the injury report today, Thursday. So I started digging into, what's the possibility that he'll actually sit in the next game? And I think the probability is pretty good. No inside information. I haven't talked to any sources that said, hey, Sean, Cade's not playing. But I think this is a spot where he may sit. When Cade suited up for the Cavs, that was his 7th game in 12 days. Over that stretch, he's averaging just over 36 minutes a game, was the leading scorer for the Pistons in 10 of 12 of those games. Second in NBA in usage over that 12-game span at 35.7%, only behind SGA over that last 12-game span, who's at 37.4%. So if he sits, that'll give him the much-needed full 3 days of rest with the softer game against Charlotte coming up on Sunday. Pistons without Cade this year, 1-3 straight up, only averaging 102 points scored with him. And that win was a 2-point win versus the Toronto Raptors in Detroit. And the Raptors are one of the worst road teams in the NBA. And quietly, as much as we've been loving the Pistons, 2-5 straight up over their last 7, they haven't been getting W's. So now, I hate to just gamble on the injury report, but if it's confirmed Cade is out, this number goes to 5.5, 4.5, 5.5, and it's like 170, 175 on the money line. I don't believe Cade's going to play. I'm going to go out on a limb and gamble. And I believe sometimes if you really want to try to get the best numbers in a lot of spots, I think you got to go out on the limb sometimes in the NBA, play numbers the night before when things are still a little murky. If you wait till things are officially announced, the number's going to jump all over the place. This is kind of maybe a little bit of an in-between number. It'll definitely move if Cade gets ruled out. I think he does not play. I lean that way. So I'm going to go ahead and book the Sixers here on the money line, minus 135. Let's talk about the Sixers for a second. Joel Embiid is active, should play in this game. He came back on Tuesday, had a good game, 29 points, looked all right. He didn't play in the second leg of a back-to-back. And Fonseca said before we hopped on, because of course not. But this seems like a game that couple days off, right back to it for Joel Embiid. Paul George's second game back after him coming back from injury. He played in his first game. He's got that one under his belt. Now he can come back and get acclimated and rolling. And then if we talk about Tyrese Maxey, this guy is an absolute killer. He actually scored 28 versus the Pistons without Cade Cunningham earlier this year. And Maxey's been on a tear. I mean, he's scoring 30 plus a night the last like 10, 15 games. He's been absolutely sensational. So with the Pistons without Cade, flat out won't be able to keep up offensively. As I mentioned, they're only scoring 102 a night when he doesn't play. If Cade goes, he's still dealing with the injury. I believe offensively they have a lot of firepower now with Joel going, Tyrese, Paul George's second game back. I still like the Sixers to get the W here. You get a better number, probably if Cade is announced in as well. But either way, I'm like 65-35. Cade's not going to play. And I think this is the best possible spot to back the Philadelphia 76ers on the money line, minus 135. What do you think?
His props are listed, that being Cade Cunningham. That doesn't always mean that they're going to play. Like you mentioned, sort of gambling against the injury report. I would say, look, if you're betting on the NBA, you're always gambling against the injury report. Because in this league, like, dude, especially during the winter, You really notice this if you're paying attention to this stuff and if you play fantasy, because I don't force you to pay attention to this stuff. Because you just open up your roster, you check it at about, I don't know, 3:42 p.m. Games don't start for about 3+ hours. And you're like, wait, how is Jose Alvarado sick? How is this person, like, they have a sore knee? How is this, now all of a sudden Alperen Şengün is getting scratched or whatever? Like, Giannis got scratched from a game the other day, like very late into the process, right beforehand. So you just never really know. I think the Sixers are going to win this game. We'll see. But I think they're going to win this game. The Cade thing, I don't know if I'd worry about it too much. Joel Embiid, now the Pistons aren't a bad team anymore. But Joel Embiid has had success against Jalen Duren in the past, a lot of it. And like, you have Gershon Yabusele is questionable, but if you have Joel Embiid there, you're fine. Quentin Grimes is expected to make his debut for the Sixers. I don't know what that's going to look like, but Caleb Martin was on the shelf. Quentin Grimes actually could be like a meaningful player for them down the stretch. We'll see in terms of role. I feel like they're still trying to figure out who's going to fill that Jared McCain void best. And Quentin Grimes is also in a situation where you have to make a decision on him in terms of an extension. So Philly is incentivized to see what they have because they got off the Caleb Martin contract. So I think Quentin Grimes will get some run. I don't know how much in this game, but I'm curious to see how he fits. That's something that could help them. And as of the time we're talking right now, there aren't Sixer props available, but Tyrese Maxey is always going to get a look from me, at least, because of the way he's playing. With or without Joel Embiid, it doesn't matter. And I think Tyrese Maxey, he's going to have, obviously, a nice matchup here. So I would favor Philly in this spot, too. And I'm a little surprised, given that Joel Embiid's going to play, that it's just 2.5. But then again, right before we started, Sean, it was 1.5.
1.5. I had the 1.5 loaded, and right before we started recording, it went to 2.5. So I gave out the money line at minus 135 rather than pretty much almost a full possession there at 2.5. I mean, to close it out here and talk about the schedule one more time. The Pistons have the Philly today, if you're listening on Friday, which you probably are. Then they have Charlotte Sunday. Then Tuesday, Wednesday, they're in Chicago to close it out before heading into the All-Star break. If you want to try to close out strong before the All-Star break, this would be the spot, fresh off the ankle tweak, to get Cade a few days. So stay tuned. We'll see how it goes. If Cade goes, I'm going to get the worst price of it, but I do still think Philly has a really good chance to win this game. 65-35 for my estimation that Cade doesn't go. And then we're in a really good spot if this tips and Cade is in street close. All right. We mentioned at the top of the show that we're coming to you from our Tommy John home studios, and that's because great games start with great underwear, and Tommy John makes the greatest. I have some. I tell you guys every episode. This is actually a Tommy John t-shirt right here. Very, very cozy. I'm wearing some Tommy John pants as well. It's a little pajama set that I got on because I like to be comfortable when I do the pod. I got the underwear I wear daily. I grabbed some over the holidays for friends. They're the real deal. Go check out the Tommy John stuff ASAP. And remember, when you're truly comfortable, you do everything better, and that includes betting. So if you love the Buckets podcast, if you love this crew, Bryan Fonseca, Sean Little, you'll love Tommy John. Get 25% off your first order right now at TommyJohn.com/buckets. That's 25% off at TommyJohn.com/buckets. And since we're talking Tommy John, let's get into the Tommy John Big Ballsy parlay. We're just going to add the 2 plays that we gave out to you and the lean off the top of the show. I'm not a big parlay guy. Fonseca's not a big parlay guy. It's a marathon, not a race. But we know the folks like the action. So here it is. Bam Adebayo, over 14.5 rebounds plus assists. Let's go Sixers. Sixers, let's go minus 2.5 for the parlay. Keon Johnson, over 13.5 points, plus 510 in the market as we record this Thursday night. Bam Adebayo, over 14.5 rebounds plus assists. Sixers minus 2.5. Keon Johnson over 13.5 points plus 509. To recap, Bryan Fonseca is his single. Bam Adebayo over 14.5 rebounds plus assists. I'm on Sixers minus 1.5. Or excuse me, Sixers money line minus 135. Go check out the recap of the trade deadline. Me, Brian, Matt, and Brandon are hopping off this to go do that right now. As I mentioned, go subscribe to the Action Network YouTube page. Fonseca, always a pleasure. Let's cash a couple of tickets. Buckets is off for the weekend, but we'll be back tomorrow. For Bryan Fonseca, I'm your host, Sean Little. Until next time, let's get buckets, baby.